If you love FPV cameras with CCD sensors, like the Runcam Swift or the Foxeer Arrow, you might be getting a little bit stressed out these days. It kind of seems like every new FPV camera has a CMOS sensor, doesn't it? And lots of people really hate the way that CMOS sensor images look. They don't have to look bad, but it sure seems like they often do, at least in FPV cameras. And if you've ever looked at a Runcam Eagle and gone, "Bleh, I hate that," you know what I'm talking about. Today we're looking at a camera from Runcam, the Runcam Sparrow Pro. Now this is a new revision of Runcam's Sparrow line, which although it has a CMOS sensor, tries to strike a balance between the things that make a CMOS image good and the things you like about a CCD. So is the Sparrow the best of both worlds? That's what we're here to find out. Before we get into the video, here's a quick look at the specs for these two cameras. If you're the kind of person who doesn't have time to watch a whole video, these specs are for you. And if you look down in the video description, there's a link to a spreadsheet where I compare the major specifications for as many Runcam, Foxeer, Caddx, FPV cameras as possible. So if you just want to dig through the spreadsheet and just see, okay, which one's got the field of view I need? Which one has that is the place to go. Definitely go check that out. But now we're going to watch this handsome devil croon on about cameras for about 10 minutes. You guys love it. I know you love it. Let's get into the video. The camera that we're looking at here today is the Runcam Micro Sparrow V2. And we're also looking at the Micro Sparrow V2 Pro, which is an update to the Micro Sparrow. Some of you are going to see the Pro as an improvement. Some of you are going to see it actually as a downgrade. And I'm going to help you figure out which of these two you want. Here on the bench, I've got the Micro Sparrow V2, which is the typical micro form factor. And if we look at this, you can see some of the things that people like about it, which are it's very lightweight, comes around 4 or 5 grams, and it's very small. So it's great for micro quads, like 2-inch and 3-inch quads. But many people are putting these cameras even on 5-inch quads just because they're so small, light, easy to mount. This is the Micro Sparrow V2 Pro, and the differences are obvious. We've got, although this still fits in the micro form factor, in other words, the width of the camera is the same and it'll fit in a mounting bracket, it's obviously got a much bigger case and it's much heavier. So this comes in at around 9 grams, whereas this guy comes in closer to 4 or 5 grams. Does that 5 grams matter? It's a good question. Whenever we talk about making a quadcopter lighter, there are a few things you can do to make a quad much, much lighter, knock 20 or 30 grams off of it. But you very quickly get into a realm where you have to do a lot of small things to make the quad lighter. So for example, you go to titanium screws and you save 8 grams or something over the weight of the whole quad. Now that 8 grams will never make a difference, but that 8 grams combined with 4 grams here and 5 grams there and 7 grams here, and suddenly you save 30 grams. So the 5 gram difference between these two cameras is not going to make or break any individual build all by itself, but as part of an overall strategy to make the whole quad lighter, that 5 grams can really add up. Does it matter to you? Only you can decide. The other big difference between the regular Sparrow V2 and the Pro is the lens. And you can see here, the lens on the Pro is a lot bigger. And in fact, the lens on the Pro is the same M12 thread. It's the same that the full-size cameras use. And so the image quality is a lot better. Or is it? We're going to take these cameras outside in a little bit and hold them side by side, and you can see for yourself. Because objectively speaking, the larger lens has higher image quality. But if you're not just holding the two images side by side and really peeking at them and, by zooming in on the desktop, are you really going to notice that difference when you're flying? I think that's a good question. And again, the answer is going to be different for everybody. The other difference we see with these guys is how they mount and how they enclose the board. Of course, the Micro Sparrow V2 has the board mounted on the back of the camera, or really the camera mounted around the front of the board, and it doesn't really offer any protection at all to the circuit board, whereas the Pro has the board enclosed inside the case They both have these same mounting holes here, and neither of them has a threaded insert. Some of these cameras will have like a brass insert, and it adds a lot of durability. The metal that's used here is I guess it's like a magnesium alloy or something. It's designed to be really light, but it's also kind of brittle, and that means in an impact you'll see a lot of cases where this screw will crack, and you'll basically just have to trash the case. And that's true even for this guy, which is relatively light. When you get an impact, it can crack here. So I don't think either of these guys is going to really particularly do better than the other in that department. Again, it's always nice to see a camera with those threaded inserts when you can get it. Now we're going to go outside in a minute and we're going to compare the image quality of these cameras, but I want to take you on a brief walk through the menu, and you're going to see something really interesting when we go into the menu. So here we are looking at the menu, and you can see, by the way, it's got an OSD, voltage monitoring, so if you don't have OSD on your flight controller, you can do basic voltage monitoring and call sign through this menu. But when I click the button, does that menu look familiar to you? It looks just like a Predator, doesn't it? A Foxeer Predator. And in fact, the circuit board or sensor or whatever it is, the image processing thing in the camera is actually the same one that's in the Foxeer Predator. So if you like the Foxeer Predator image, but you want to buy a Runcam, you should be taking a look at this one. And in fact, Runcam has taken steps to fix a few of the things that people have noticed about the Predator's image. Most notably, the Predator has a really blue cast to the image a lot of the time. I've seen some Predator images look fantastic, but then every so often, it's just like the image is totally blue and it's really annoying. So Runcam says that they've fixed that, and don't let the fact that they're using the same image processing thing make you think these cameras are identical. These image processing things there's a lot of customization that the manufacturer can do to control how it processes the image. So they've got the same sensor in them, but different algorithms setting. Well, we'll see when we go outside. You know, there's something about these cameras that a lot of people overlook in their reviews. I want to stick this in here before I forget. And that is, you know that if you push the button, you get to the menu here, right? Obviously, that's that. But hang on. But what if you want to adjust the OSD, the on-screen display, like your call sign? How do you do that? The way you do that is you hold up on the joystick for about 2 seconds, and it brings you to a completely separate menu that lets you tweak the OSD. And if you didn't know that it was there, now you do. That lets you set the alarm for the low voltage, change your call sign. Let's just turn the call sign off, or we can move it around. The timer, the voltage, and so on. The other thing that you may not realize is that you see it says personal up here. These cameras have presets, image presets, and personal is your personal image preset that you can tweak and it'll be remembered. But if you hold to the left or to the right, you can switch between these presets: light tracks, outdoor, indoor, cloudy, twilight, and back to personal. A lot of people don't know this exists, and especially if you have camera control active, you can be doing this from your transmitter as you go to fly. It's a very nice thing that I think a lot of people aren't taking advantage of. So let's take these cameras outside, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you just a little walk around with the two cameras side by side so you can compare how the Sparrow V2 Pro stacks up against the Sparrow V2 Micro. And these cameras internally should have the exact same image sensor, image processing algorithms. The main difference between them is going to be the lens. However, you can decide for yourself how you feel about that. In this scene, take a look at the shadow detail under the trees. That's the main thing I'm looking for here. Here you can look for distortion in the slats on the side of the house. Here's some up close detail. We're moving a little quick here, but to be honest with you, here's my dog. Yay, I love dogs. How much do you benefit from doing like zoomed in 400% crops? You're flying freaking FPV. If you can't tell the difference between the cameras here as I'm just walking around, you're sure as heck not going to notice a difference when you're actually flying. That's my opinion anyway. Yep. Here you can look at the slats as they're moving by of the fence. I'm trying to kind of compare the geometry of the cameras. Here I look at the tree branches and look for kind of details in the tree branches. here, we're looking for lens flare. Now, this is a place where there is a definite difference. The smaller lens is worse lens flare. You can see, if you want to go back, you can freeze frame this stuff or watch it at half speed. We're going to go into a little more detail into specific things in just a few seconds, so don't worry about that. Here, I'm looking underneath the awning of the porch to see how much shadow detail the camera is capable of capturing. And here we're going to do the white flash hand cover test and see how quickly the exposure algorithm changes. Yeah. Okay, they're both pretty quick. They're both pretty similar, honestly. And finally, I'm going to go back here into the woods behind the barn and look at some sort of dappled sunlight, low light, and again, see how they stack up. Yep, let's see here. Yeah. In my opinion, they're pretty similar. They're really quite similar, to be honest. The other thing you'll see me check in just a second here is the geometry of the lens. Both of these cameras have a 2.1mm lens on them, but one is a much smaller and one is a much larger lens. So I wanted to see if there were any optical differences between them. And I'm looking for like barrel distortion, linearity. We see some small differences here, but I think it's because the two cameras are side by side and they're not exactly the same location relative to the obstacle. Like here, it looks like the Sparrow V2 is just a little more sort of barrel distortion, but as I sort of come at the two fence posts straight on, I feel like these lenses are very, very similar in terms of field of view and linearity and optical, just very, very similar in every way. Now I'll give you some more detailed thoughts about the actual image that the camera makes. There's a couple things to talk about in this image. The first is I think it's a really nice, colorful image. The colors are really nice and saturated. A lot of times, especially on CCD cameras, you get a really sort of muddy, muted colors. How about the digital artifacting that plagues so many CMOS cameras? The two forms of digital artifacting that tend to appear are, number one, a shimmering, especially in like grass or in tree branches where there's a lot of fine details. And this shimmering, I think, is the result of the sharpening algorithm that the camera is using to try and sharpen up the image, make it seem like there's more resolution than there really is. The other type of artifacting that we see is a kind of stair-stepping on certain types of lines and patterns. If we take a look in the Predator, we can see that those things are still there. Sorry, I said Predator. The Sparrow. If we take a look in the Sparrow, we can see that those things are still there, but they're a lot less prominent than they are in the Eagle, which many people just find completely objectionable. Finally, we'll take a look at the camera's ability to resolve shadow detail and dynamic range. And I'm going to show you some examples, but I have to tell you, you really need to see this side by side with other cameras in order to judge. I actually was a little bit surprised at the results when I put this camera side by side with the Eagle, the Predator. And I hate to tease you, but the video is already plenty long enough, and I just can't start going into that other content until I'm just going to go into a video all its own. So I'll show you some examples where there's some shadow detail. You can look at underneath my porch is a common one I do. You can look at the shadow under these trees and see what you think of its ability to render shadow detail. The last thing I'm going to show you guys is a nice little time lapse of the sun going down here at Casa de Bardwell. I want to do a low light test, and again, this is going to go into the next video that I'm teasing the heck out of you guys with. I apologize for that, but we're already at 10 minutes, where I'm going to show you all of these cameras and how they respond as the light goes down. But you can watch and see how this guy does, and you can just watch the sun peacefully go down over the trees. And thank you guys so much for watching. The Sparrow V2 Pro is, I'll sum up by telling you, I think that it beats the pants off the Predator in almost every way, but mostly it doesn't have that awful blue cast that annoys the heck out of me and makes me just sort of reject the Predator out of hand, which is a shame because the Predator can be really good looking, but it just so often is not. How does the Sparrow compare against the Eagle? That is the big question. The Eagle is my current favorite. Can the Sparrow Pro match up? And how does the Sparrow compare against just the good old Swift? We're going to find out in the next video where I head-to-head these guys. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Joshua Bardwell. This has been FPV Know-It-All, and happy flying.